Barbarian. So this is the latest film from newcomer Zach Cregger. This is a little horror film that we don't really know too much about. Trailer doesn't reveal much, which is nice. It stars Georgina Campbell as Tess, who rents an Airbnb late one night, arrives at it in rundown Detroit of all places. It's dark, it's late, it's storming. She tries to get in, struggles. Eventually realizes that someone is already there. Bill Skarsgård's Keith, who is it turns out they've double booked this room and they're trying to figure out. And he's like, "Well, we both paid for the night. We're here." And she's like, "Well, I'm just gonna leave." And they kind of agree. You got to suspend a little disbelief, but basically they both agree to stay in there in the same house because it's late, it's dangerous, hotels are closed, things like this. He says, "I'll stay in my room, or you stay in the room. You can lock the door. I'll stay out here." And it turns out that this house is hiding some sort of secret, something deep within the bowels. We don't know what. The trailer doesn't reveal much, and I'm not going to reveal much more than that. The film also stars Justin Long from Tusk and other comedy films, and that's all I'm really going to say, because that's the setup, and that's all you need to know if you're interested in going in. Zach, what'd you think of this?
I was excited to see Barbarian because of its director. It's somebody I like. Zach Cregger is a member of The Whitest Kids You Know, which is an old sketch comedy group from the early 2000s that had some surprisingly funny stuff. He's never jumped into horror. So when I saw the trailer for Barbarian and saw his name attached at the end, I was like, oh, well, surely that can't be the sketch comic I know. But seemingly following the footsteps of many other sketch comedians who have moved into directing, like Jordan Peele or Bill Hader, or a few others that I can't think of off the top of my head, Cregger decided, hey, I'm going to take a swing at it, and I want to make this movie called Barbarian. The trailer for Barbarian is all anticipation. You know something's wrong. It doesn't tell you what it is. It shows you some quick flashes of some stuff. Come see the movie. And I was really surprised to see that a lot of the movie echoes like that same feeling of unease and anticipation. Horror of the mind, as Hitchcock liked to call it. And I'm excited to talk about Barbarian without getting into spoilers, because the less you know, the better. I think I like Barbarian. I think I like this movie more than Andy did.
I think so too.
It's got problems. It's got problems for sure. But for a first time director, I was surprisingly impressed. What did you think of Barbarian, Andy?
I was a little split on it. There are things that work and things that kind of don't. I like the second half of the film better once it kind of gets going. The first act, first 40 minutes, they drag a little bit to me, and it does that thing which I absolutely hate, where you walk in knowing the premise of the movie, and it takes forever for the characters on screen to get there. The famous example is the movie Old. I'm not Shyamalan's Old, where we know that the beach makes you old, and it takes 40 minutes for the characters on screen to realize that the beach makes you old. So there was a little bit of that. We know that there's
Hey, sorry guys. Funny technical thing. Andy's computer restarted, so I'm just gonna pick up right where he left off. It's no big thing. Unfortunately, I don't remember exactly where he left off, so let me just jump back into it. Working your way into Barbarian, you don't really know where things are going, and that's part of what was so exciting about it for me. I think I liked that Barbarian fills you with this kind of feeling of anticipation. Something's going on in the house, so we don't really know what it is. And you have to start to figure it out based on, I don't know, details. Andy saw this as it takes too long to get to what's going on, right? Like it's this takes forever. I'm not a fan. I didn't mind the anticipation. What's troubling, I think, is the pacing. And I do think that's probably the start of some issues in Barbarian. While I like the pacing a lot, it's got issues. It's not for everybody. Cregger is kind of bringing himself out as a bit of an auteur as far as this film is concerned, and he wants to step into that by embracing, I think, two ideologies. Number one, being able to rattle up a scare inside of you, right? Put you on the edge of your seat in anticipation, waiting for what might be coming around the corner. Hold on. There's the man. Hey, Andy. I was just talking about.
I'm back. I'm back. Sorry.
That's fine. I'll splice this. I'll splice this together in editing, so hopefully people don't hear the giant pause. But because I did the same thing, I just went quiet. I was like, I don't know if Andy is still talking or not. Boy, podcasting fun, huh? Anyway, pacing in Barbarian, I think, is a challenge because Cregger seems to ramp you up to a scare really slow, like, and he settles you in with a bit of humor. Script's kind of bouncy and fun at the moments where it needs to be light to give you a break, and then it ramps up to like a real drop off, and then it just starts to tip over the edge, and then it'll cut away to something. And he does that trick once or twice, and it's not too bad. But I think there's people who have seen Barbarian who did not like this gag and were like, "Hey, just let's go, all right? Like I want the energy, I want the smoke, I want the heat." And it's a bold move for a first time director to jump out and give you all of these feelings of unease and have you inch up to the edge of the scare, and then just kind of pull back. But I didn't mind it. I thought it was something different. And I didn't mind it too much. But like Andy said, it may feel like it takes a while to get to what we already have learned from the trailer. Something's wrong in the house.
Yeah, it also it feels like it starts over several times. It's almost like a set of short films in that way, where it could just kind of it could have a better through line, have a better narrative arc. That was one of the things that just the structure kind of bothered me.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I didn't mind it, and fortunately, like you get back to the goods pretty quick, but it makes for a bit of a discombobulating experience, especially in Act 3, where things really get off the rails. I didn't know what to expect, and it turns into almost like a grindhouse horror B movie, right? Like kind of goofy and gore-oriented, and not as so focused on setting the pace and the tone of the story to come, because we've already played our hand and now we have to, follow through on that. Barbarian like keeps its cards close to its chest until well into the future. But once you get there, I think you'll like what you find. I did, at least. I thought it was pretty good, if not a little all over the place. Barbarian is not a movie that necessarily cares about its smallest plot holes. By the time you hit credits, there's definitely a couple questions that are unanswered, and I think you're meant to kind of look in and have an introspective moment about what all that means. But it's also a little shallow, and sometimes I think the best horror movies are, right. Like the original Halloween, John Carpenter didn't spend a whole lot of time explaining how Michael Myers escapes the insane asylum or how he got the mechanics.
Yeah, he just does.
Just kind of happens. Yeah, and that this movie takes those liberties too, and I don't mind that. Like it's we're getting into spooky season. Okay, sure, Zach Cregger, I'll take it. That stuff's not bad. It's also got a bit of social commentary that we should probably talk about.
Yeah, I wanted to get in
if
that.
We can.
Yeah, this is definitely making commentary about the kind of power dynamics between men and women, and it's very kind of clearly has subtext about sexual assault. And just the opening scene between the two characters, Bill Skarsgård, he's not a bad guy when we first meet him. He's a little weird, he seems a little off, but he's not threatening. But there's still, they have dynamics, like he wasn't afraid to open the door and she was like, I would have never opened the door, this sort of thing. And if you've seen Alien, the original Alien, that there's been a lot of academic papers written about how that movie is actually about men's fear of sexual assault, because the xenomorph is female, and she devours all the men. The main protagonist is Sigourney Weaver, of course. This movie has a little bit of that, and it reminded me of some of that too. And we get some of that juxtaposition where, you know, in the world, that's kind of what's presented in the world, men kind of being stronger and being able to overpower women essentially, and we get some of that kind of flipped on its head, particularly with Justin Long's character, who is a real scumbag.
I mean, not to give too much away, but yeah, I think the social commentary is striking. Cregger definitely knows like what the film's self-aware, knows what kind of movie it is, and like from the very onset, this woman arrives in an Airbnb in South Detroit late at night. It's rainy. It's a bad part of town, and this guy, stranger, answers the door and says, "Well, come on in." She's like, I don't know about that. That's probably not a smart thing, right? Like from our very open, it's in the trailer. Like you are automatically questioning Keith, Bill Skarsgård's character, and Cregger, like in the first act, does a great job of playing that up, because Keith's weird, but he's not that weird. But he also could be really weird, right? Like you don't really know, and it's a great like way to kind of bring your character down to this level of unease and fear and you know predation before dropping the bottom out from under him, which is great. It does, like I said, get messy in parts. For Andy, the first act was messy. For me, the third act was messy. But overall, I think I liked it. Like I like what's happening here. I think it's promising. I do want to talk about the setting a minute. Andy, any other outstanding thoughts before I jump into
that? No, go ahead.
So this movie is set in Michigan, in Detroit. And I got a lot of family in Michigan. I mean, I've been going to visit Michigan for a lot of summers, and like it's so funny because Cregger, I think, is also from Michigan. I feel pretty confident saying that watching this movie. This feels like somebody who's been there, because Detroit, or at least the outskirts of Detroit, serve as this wonderful setting for a horror film because the cops won't come help you. Like at one point, a character calls the cops, and they're like, "Yeah, everybody's busy." We don't have anybody to come help you. You're calling 911 in Detroit. We'll be there in 2 hours, you know? Brilliant. Mm-hmm. Like it gives you a clever way for characters to have access to at least some technology, but they can't really get the help they need. This is played up even more in characters in and around Detroit, like other individuals, like Justin Long. Like these are people that are not necessarily like great. They lived hard lives. Like they're not gonna present as like the nicest individuals, and that can be a real hazard when you've got a fish out of water, or a couple of fish out of water in the case of our two leads, you know, in a place they're not supposed to be. Yeah, and I thought that was clever. It also is a bit of a laugh if you've been to Detroit, because a lot of the houses you see are just crappy houses from Detroit, and they're played with like horror music, like it's supposed to be real spooky, and it's almost a laugh. I enjoyed it.
Yeah, I was going to say that's actually one of the kind of parallels to sexual assault issues. The police are kind of useless in this. The police don't believe our main character when she says like, "There's something terrible going into this house. Someone's trapped. We need to help them." And like the police are like, "I don't know. I got other stuff to do." And that's kind of a parallel there.
Yeah. Also, fantastic music. While I'm thinking about it, I really like the music for Barbarian. And as a podcast with the red and black color scheme, boy, the poster is top notch, top class Barbarian poster. Any other thoughts for recommendations, Andy? I don't want to spoil anything. I'd love to keep talking about it, but like it's a less you know the better kind of film.
Yeah, exactly. I don't want to get too much more into it. I'm ready for recommendations.
Andy, would you recommend Barbarian?
I would say save it for streaming. It wasn't bad. It has a lot of good moments. Like I said, the things that didn't work for me are kind of the first act's a little slow. It kind of starts over several times, and the overall narrative arc is a little shaky, but it's still a lot of fun. And it's only 100 minutes. It's not super long. It has some good scares kind of as the film goes on. You know, it's definitely squarely in the horror genre. So I would say save it for streaming. If you're a hardcore horror fan, you'll probably enjoy it. If horror is not your thing, maybe skip it.
Yeah. Well, hey, shout out to Ray on Facebook, who just tuned in and said he really enjoyed this movie. Yeah, I think I did too, Ray. Yeah, I liked Barbarian. I think I'd give it a recommendation. You see it in theaters with a couple of content warnings. It is a hard R. So if you're gonna go see this, like, don't it's hard. It's a hard R. Like you're getting into it. It's good. You don't know what's going on in that house. I think it's a good showing from Zach Cregger for a first time directorial debut. Reportedly, he talked to Jordan Peele for a while about this. To hear Cregger tell it, Peele was like all but too helpful when Cregger was like, "Hey, I think I want to make a horror movie," and he was like, "Oh my god, let me come over and we'll hang out." He talk about making a horror movie. I think his ability to adapt some of his like comedic timing of setting up a joke and then revealing the punchline comes into play surprisingly well in this movie, from its lighter moments to its surprisingly darker. This movie reminded me of some of the best B horror movies we've seen recently. People have compared it to James Wan's Malignant. People have said it's like Wes Craven movie. Little inklings of John Carpenter in there. I think Barbarian's really cool. It's got problems though. It's not perfect for sure.
I think it's
but
I think it's a good
yeah.
kind of first film because it's a brand new filmmaker. It's a great
Yeah.
first attempt. I think he will definitely probably improve from this. There's things to build. You know, it's not like Ari Aster hitting a home run out of the park, but it's a good start. It's a good kind of solid film. Lots to improve on, but definitely not like a bomb or a dud or anything.
Yeah, if Cregger chases like the best elements of this feature and pursues that into his next film, I think he's in a really good spot. If he doesn't and he takes the wrong lessons away from this, like he might be in some trouble. But like the best parts of Barbarian, I think, are really good stuff. So yeah, I'd recommend Barbarian. I think it's surprisingly good. Made like $10 million over the weekend. It was the only thing that came out, which is exciting. So good for Barbarian and good for Zach Cregger and good for indie horror everywhere. It's nice to see something that's not just another Blue Mouse feature.